Hello, everyone. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I hope that you are doing okay. Thank you very much for joining. I'm going to be starting in 1 minute, just as scheduled. So please hang on. So thank you for taking the time to join this webinar today. It's a great pleasure to have you and to discuss interesting topics around issues that are currently facing the competency framework of human resources professionals around the world. So without further waiting, I'd like to start as scheduled on time. Again, let me welcome everyone and thank you very much for joining this webinar by Merck Training and Consulting. As you can see, it's entitled The Impact of Employee Engagement on Performance. And this is discussed mainly through the lens of data analytics. So hoping that you enjoy a little bit of math, right? And I know usually people from the HR profession try to avoid numbers as much as possible, but well, that's something that we will not be able to avoid in the near future, and that's why we need to be ready and prepare for it. So a recent study that has been done by LinkedIn shows that in the UK, only 6%, by Deloitte, sorry, only 6% of the HR professionals around the world feel comfortable using HR analytics. And that's a fact that we would like to contribute to changing through studying more how data analytics can be used to inform business decisions and help human resources professionals as well to present a powerful business cases when it comes to bringing about changes in the organizations. So just for everyone's knowledge, we are recording this session just to ensure that we can post it later on our website and on our social media channels to leverage the benefit. And if somebody couldn't attend it on as scheduled, then they will be able to see it later on, and they will be able to watch it later on, or maybe you would like to watch it again, and that would be an opportunity for you. So just before moving ahead, would you please let me know through the chat that you can hear me well, my voice is clear, my slides are showing from your end. And I would also ask people who feel that they have some noise around them, just to, if they would possibly make sure their phones are, or their microphones are on mute, just to make sure that we maintain a clear communication throughout the webinar. So thank you for everyone who answered the chat. And my name is Rabia. I'll be your host for today, discussing this very interesting topic. This topic is presented by Merck Training and Consulting, a company that has been doing this kind of business for 65 years now in the region, currently headquartered in Dubai and serving mainly the Middle East and the GCC region, with outreach to Europe, Africa, and Southeast Asia as well. I'm not gonna spend too much time on the introduction, just to make sure that we get to the main topic. However, for those of you who wonder what the name stands for, the name Merck stands for the 5 values that we strive to live by on daily basis: mastery, excellence, innovation, reliability, and client centricity. And that is partially reflected through this webinar, which Merck believes that its duty to fulfill and to contribute to the knowledge building in the area and in the region. So hence, these are the values. The company has to offer more than 400 courses right now in several topics. Certainly human resources and training and data analytics are one of those. Our courses are endorsed by very famous international bodies around the world that offer more credibility and value for the participants that decide to join our courses. As of myself, quickly, I'm in HR by design and by career. I serve companies in the GCC region. I taught a little bit in universities for master's students. My area of expertise is mainly technical human resources, leadership development, and HR and consultancy. I hold a bachelor and a master's in education and another master's in human resources management and training from the UK. And that's it. I guess we're all ready to start. I'd like to remind everyone that at any point in time that you feel like you would like to ask me any question, please feel free to put it in the chat box, and I will make sure that I will cater for it either immediately or by the end of the session, which will be wrapped up as well through a Q&A session of 5 to 7 minutes, maybe, just to ensure that I answered all your questions. So we're talking today about how to use data analytics to link employee engagement to performance in the organization. I'm pretty sure that nowadays, most of you as HR professionals in your companies, you've been exposed to employee engagement surveys to check somehow the pulse of motivation of your employees, to see if there are some interventions in terms of leadership development, in terms of HR practices, in terms of rewards and benefits, any area that touches into the employee engagement. And this topic is gaining a lot of momentum because companies around the world are losing a lot of money because of employee disengagement. I'm sure you know that the Gallup Institute reports around 29% of as a rate of engaged employees around the world, where the other 71 are mainly divided into 55 as not engaged employees and 15% as actively disengaged employees. And so we do these surveys, and these surveys come to us as dashboards, as averages mainly, and come into recommendations as well. So they don't come individualized, sometimes to protect the confidentiality of the respondents, and that's totally understood. But when we see the results of the engagement survey in this way, we could act more generally instead of locally and specifically. So that's why I'd like to see if we can approach employee engagement data from individual perspective, although we will keep the confidentiality of the data, but we will be able to use the individual responses and link it to individual performances in the organization in a way that will inform our decision making, that will give us real insights on what are the main variables influencing the performance via the employee engagement. So allow me to start a little bit by sharing some of the definitions of employee engagement. Mercer, for example, defines it as a psychological state where employees feel like they would like to invest everything they have to contribute to the company's success. Hay Group defines it as a function of commitment and discretionary effort where people deliberately invest all their minds, their bodies, their hearts in all together to help the company succeed. Towers Watson explains it as the willingness and ability to go the extra mile for the organization and so on. And what I really love about it is this definition by Lord Curie, who says it's like something that you can smell, right? When people are engaged, you can feel there's a different energy around them. You can feel that the way they approach business is not as a job that pays the bill, but a place where they would like to see change happening. They would like to contribute to their community, to the society that they live in. And as like every single research now you read in any academic journal related to psychology, or to organizational performance, or to human resources, you will find proofs about a direct connection, which is a causality between performance and employee engagement. So employees who have high level of engagement will show high level of performance on the job most of the time. So having said that, and having defined employee engagement, I'd like to take you quickly through the one of the very famous surveys that Gallup calls Q12, and that they use those 12 questions to measure employee engagement. And it mainly focuses on employees really knowing what to expect from work, having their tools to facilitate doing the job, having the opportunity to excel in what they love to do, receiving recognition, discussing their careers with their direct manager, receiving encouragement and positive recognition, getting involved and sharing their opinion, establishing a line of sight with the purpose of the organization, having high standards, having friends at work, talking about their progress in the company, and receiving opportunities of learning and growth. So this is how employee engagement is usually measured. You most of the time engage with a third party that will launch an internal survey, usually anonymous and confidential, and they come up to you with aggregate reports, mainly with recommendations to act on leadership development or human resources development and on the work environment. That's the what we need to know for this webinar about employee engagement. Moving forward, I'd like also to introduce data analytics, and more importantly, HR data analytics, which is going to be the tool that we are going to use now to connect performance and employee engagement. And HR data analytics is simply defined by the Society of Human Resources Management as a discovery, interpretation, and communication of meaningful patterns that we can somehow extract while observing how people work and behave around us. And this extraction usually comes in terms of an intuition, but then it is formulated as a hypothesis, it is tested for significance, and then it will inform decision-making in the organization in a scientific fashion and in a more in a way that has more probability of success and or on really identifying root causes for the human resources problems that you face in the organization. So that's a little bit theoretical, I know, and we're looking more into understanding the case study that we would like to tackle today. So without further ado, I'd like to give you a little bit of a brief about what we are studying today. So it's a private company that sells financial services, and they have done employee engagement surveys, and they happen also to have in their systems data about customer loyalty and data about the reinvestment willingness of their client. And what we are trying to do here is to find out whether the engagement of an employee plays a role in increasing the willingness of a client to invest again with this financial services company. So in other words, and in more common terms, what we're trying to say, this is a sales case study where we are trying to see whether engaged salespeople will engage clients in more deals. Certainly, when we say reinvesting, this is a very important indicator of organizational performance and of an individual performance. And that's why the case study works on both sides. If you would like to measure the individual performance of these salespeople, and if you are going to also measure the performance of the sales organization altogether. And as you can see in the middle, we are going to do this by agency of customer loyalty. And what I mean is the following. We are suggesting two interrelated theories or two interrelated so-called in statistics hypotheses. Our H1 or the first hypothesis states that employee engagement of a salesperson influences customer loyalty. So as you can see, we are establishing the first link between the first circle and the second circle. And the second hypothesis suggests that customer loyalty influences the willingness of a customer to reinvest. So as you can see, the first influence the second influence the third, and by mean of proximity, the first will influence the third via a medium, which is the customer loyalty. So how did we do that, and what is involved in this case study? What happens that in a short individual engagement survey have been sent to the salespeople, and this is a Likert scale, 5-point Likert scale survey, and the individual engagement, which is the first section, as you can see on the screen, consists of 3 questions. We'll see those questions later on when we do the analysis, but they are mainly about whether the employee is engaged, whether they feel they are recognized, and whether they have a good, they like hear each other well with the direct manager. So imagine with me this scenario. After every interaction between a salesperson and a client, the client is being asked 2 questions. The first one that measures their loyalty, again on a scale of 1 to 5. And the second question is asked to clients to measure their willingness to reinvest. So if, for example, I, as a salesperson, meet 10 clients every day, in the course of a month, I will meet around 220 clients. And our database is reporting the average answers of the second section and the third section. In the same time, the HR department has done the job of sending the individual engagement survey to those salespeople. I hope it's clear so far. If it's not very clear, just let me know and I will re-explain it in different words. That's the basic data collection exercise that we are doing here based on the hypotheses that we suggested first. Remember, we're assuming that individual engagement will impact customer loyalty, and the customer loyalty will impact the willingness to invest. And that's our mean for measuring the impact of employee engagement on the organizational performance. So far, so good?
Yes.
All right, excellent. So moving forward, I'd like to highlight that those three variables are known in statistics as continuous variables. And what do we mean by continuous variables? Is that that's a variable that can take an infinite of values between two numbers or in a bracket. In short terms, it's the regular numbers that we see every day in our databases, nothing special about it. And that's very nice because continuous variables usually allow us to have a lot of analysis on it. So if you imagine like we aggregated our collected data in one Excel sheet, this Excel sheet would look something like that, where the first column is asking, like the first three questions are mainly about employee engagement. And what they are measuring is a question about the relationship with the manager, a first question about engagement, and a second question about engagement. Altogether, they will be dealt with to see how these three would impact this variable, which is the mean of customer loyalty. And by mean, we mean the average of all the clients that interacted with salesperson one, showing here in the first column. So this is how the database looks like. We will not aggregate the three values here in one score of engagement because we would like to make sure that we analyze each factor separately and that we don't have any masked factor that might be more significant than the others in terms of impact on our study. So by that, in the first hypothesis, we call those three variables independent variables. And we call this one the dependent variable, definitely because we are studying how these three will impact this one. And that's why in this case, in the first hypothesis, this is my dependent variable. However, in the second hypothesis that claims that the customer loyalty impacts the willingness to invest, this will be my independent variable, while this will be my dependent variable. All right. And that's just technical terminology. You don't have to worry a lot about it. What only we need to remember is that engagement influences loyalty and loyalty influences investment. And by that, we can deduce that the engagement is impacting the willingness to invest. Now, all of that is hypothesis. So it's not yet proven, is not yet verified, is not yet tested for validity. But it comes from a lot of observation of employees' behaviors and a lot of hunches about the relationship between performance and specific behaviors. And usually it comes because you talk about it a lot, you see the data, you put it in tables, you draw it in, you like represent it in visuals, and this is where the hunch comes to you. This is how we formulate research questions and hypotheses usually, especially in a quantitative study. So that's how the data it looks. I'd like to draw your attention, if you don't mind, to one very important characteristic about this table that we have. as you definitely know, what you have as data in your HR books would be these three, because you as HR professionals launched this internal survey. However, most of the time, HR people don't have readily the data about customer service. What clients say about their opinion about the product, about the engagement with the salespeople. This is usually either in the sales department or in the MIS department or in the customer service department, sometimes in the marketing department, never in the sales department. And here I'd like to highlight that when you do HR analytics, you will need to partner with people that will provide you with this data. All right, that's absolute must. Okay, it's very important that you always make sure you pitch your cases in management committee meetings, in board meetings, or in internal, like informal discussions, just to ensure that you will find the supportive partner that will willingly give you the data without asking you, you know what, you're in HR. That's irrelevant information for you. Although we know that this is not irrelevant at all. So this is why I wanted to highlight this about the data, just to draw your attention to always partner with business units, with line management to really make business cases that are insightful and helpful for everyone around you. So this is how our data looks like. And as I mentioned, because it is continuous, then we have a series of statistical tests that we can perform on continuous variables. One of them that usually studies causation of one variable on the other is called regression analysis. It is a statistical method that usually help us to explain the impact of one variable that we call an independent variable or a predictor, or on another variable, which is the outcome or the dependent variable. And we can predict a lot of things. And by the way, this is not new. Finance people use that all the time. Sales forecast is done based on this. Marketing studies are based on that. Psychologists, doctors, insurance, actuarial employees do that. So we're the only community that is left to use HR analytics properly, and hence then the webinar altogether. So, for example, you can use regression analysis to predict when an employee is going to resign, what is the probability of resignation, do they have the willingness to stay, is this going to be a top performer or a poor performer, a lot of things. And when the regression is using continuous variables, then it is called a linear regression. All right. So I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on explaining the theory of linear regression, but here we will have two examples that hopefully will help us understand regression in more practical fashion. So you remember that sheet that I showed you? I just took it and plugged it in a statistics software called SPSS, although it can be done on Excel. So linear regression can be done very easily on Excel. The output that you will have is very similar to what you are seeing in front of you. And certainly the findings will be the same. I just use SPSS because I'm used to it. So I just took that Excel sheet that I showed you and imported it into an Excel, my SPSS, and accordingly, I ran a test called linear regression test that will help me assess whether my first hypothesis is true. So as you remember, my first hypothesis was that employee engagement impacts the customer loyalty. And the output looks like this. For those of you who are not familiar with that, all what I want you to do in this output to look specifically at two areas. My first area is R square. So what does R square mean? R square as an output explains how much variation in the dependent variable is caused by a change in the independent variable. In this case, my dependent variable, the variable that I'm trying to predict, is customer loyalty. And I have three variables which are all related to engagement. The first one was the question asked to the employees, am I really engaged in my work? As you can see, the predictors or the three variables are below in your on your screen. That's the first one. I am really engaged in my work. The second one was my manager gives me useful feedback. And the third one, I would recommend this organization as a place to work. And all these three are engagement related questions. So what we are trying to see is the following. If an employee is really engaged, that let's say he scored 5 on this question, while another one scored 4 on this question, how will this impact the change in customer loyalty? R square explains this change. What we do usually is we multiply this number by 100, and then it will become a percentage. And the conclusion here would be the following. We can say that the three engagement elements that are listed below explain 3.4% of the variation in customer loyalty. Now, what one would come and say, Rabia, it's too little, 3.4%, and I would tend to agree in that case. However, we do not usually interpret R square value or size unless it is in context of the problem at hand. So if a change in customer loyalty for this financial services company means additional $5 million in sales, then this 3.4% is good enough, especially if all you need to do is to ask the direct manager to give some useful feedback. And you can get a positive change of 3.4% on customer loyalty. Why not? It's a very cheap price to pay for such a great benefit, right? So this is how we read the R square input. But the most important factor that we usually test our hypothesis through is the number that you see here, which is called in statistics the significance. And usually it measures the probability of any finding happening by chance. And usually as a threshold of acceptance, it has to be below 0.05, which is the case here. And when you read this number and it is below 0.05, this means that your hypothesis is valid. And here we can say that based on our finding, we have a proof that employee engagement is causing a variation in customer loyalty, and hence our first hypothesis stands. Now, if our second hypothesis stands, then we will establish the full link. But before moving to the second hypothesis, I'd like to continue on showing you what would the output of linear regression look like. And that's very important because you remember I told you we will not aggregate the numbers of the 3 questions related to engagement, and that was for a very important reason. Now, in the table of coefficients, we dig deeper into the impact of each independent variable to see if alone it stands as a real influencer or a real contributor to change in the dependent variable. And the table provides also values of significance for each. And in this case, as you can see, I have for the variable number 1, which is my manager gives me useful feedback, a significance p-value of 0.2, which means that it's better to reject this variable. And the same goes for the second one. It means whether an employee receives useful feedback or not from their manager, or whether this employee recommends this organization for other or not, this is not impacting the performance or the customer loyalty. However, the most important value is being engaged at work. Certainly, this will lead us to more questions and to more findings as we collect more data and we dig further into what is causing the engagement of the employees. But unfortunately, for the sake of time, I would like to keep the example crisp and short, as you can see, just to ensure that we get by the end of the case study with some findings. So now we have proven that we have a proof that the employee engagement, everyone who answers, I am really engaged in my work, will, as a matter of fact, bring customer loyalty up. So that's how we do linear regression. I'm gonna do the linear regression another time, but this one, as you remember, on hypothesis number 2, that will study the impact of customer loyalty on the customer willingness to invest. And that's the same output, but now our dependent variable is the customer willingness to invest, while the independent variable is the customer loyalty. And here, as you can see, I have an R-square of 0.211. What does that mean? It means that customer loyalty is explaining 20% of the willingness of clients to reinvest. I know that's not news for anyone, but that's good news for human resources people who now established a link from engagement to customer loyalty, and then from loyalty to reinvestment, to sales, to revenues, to bottom lines. This is what companies like to discuss. Now, how do I ensure that my hypothesis is not only solid but also true? Is that my significance p-value that you can see here again is 0.000, which means it leaves almost no opportunity that this is a lucky guess or the hypothesis is invalid or there is no established link between loyalty and customer willingness to reinvest. So that's the output that we can see. And again, if I'd like to go a little bit on the technical end, the conclusion that we can extract here is that 21.1% variation in willingness of reinvesting is explained by customer loyalty. And that's huge, to be honest. So as you can see, now I have established this link. When I go to management and then I pitch my employee engagement initiatives, starting with this kind of study, I will definitely have more interest from their side. I will have more credibility, and I will have more chances to get approvals on employee engagement initiatives that would be implemented for the year to come. So with that, I get to the end of the case study, and I'd like to dedicate the last 5 minutes of this webinar for your questions. I know that someone already asked me if a certificate will be offered. Abdulrahman, we do not offer certificates for short webinars. It's not considered as a course. We cannot guarantee the learning outcome, and that's why we don't usually grant certificates for that. So I'm giving you a few minutes, whether you'd like to type your question down or maybe open up the mic and share your question out loud. I'm fine with both.
Thank you, Mr. Rabi. I just want to have one comment. You've talked about the experience, the engagement, how to fix on the customer's loyalty. I remember I had a course with AI HR about the employee experience. So I remember that they have mentioned a point that employee experience has an effect on customer experience, which both results on the business itself. So with employee experience and satisfaction, it will make a great, it will make the customer satisfied. So and overall, the business is winning in both sides. They earned the business won with the satisfied employee and satisfied customer. This is just a comment I wanted to share. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And that rhymes very well even with the finding, because as the test showed us that only 3% of customer loyalty is explained by employee engagement, and there's room for the other 97% that we need to decipher as well with more research and more study. So while you are thinking about your next question, I'd like also to inform you that for those of you who are really interested in learning about all these data analytics techniques in HR context, whether understanding further how employee engagement is analyzed using data, or how we can expect and predict turnover, how we can see the or explain absenteeism and reduce it in the workplace, or whether you'd like to design and test effective surveys. We are offering courses on certified courses on human resources data analytics called Certified HR Analyst. One is happening next month and another one in November. In case you'd like to attend, you can attend either on face-to-face format or on online format, and you'd be more than welcome. So if no further questions, I'd like to thank everyone for your time. I'd also like to wish you a lovely afternoon, in case it's afternoon in your time zone.
Rabia, can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure. Please go ahead.
Hi, this is Joe or Yusuf. So Rabia, here the example that you took, statistics coming from one organization, right? This is one organization,
Yes.
correct? And the 3 first engagement question reflects the number of the safe people. Correct me if I'm wrong. Like around, you're talking about around 25 safe people, or no?
No. In fact, the sample was around 540 salespeople.
Okay, but on the table, like each one represent one salespeople, right? The first.
You mean this one,
Yeah.
right? No, this was just a
Exactly.
snapshot. This is just a snapshot
Exactly.
of the
Exactly.
first.
So everyone is a respondent from each salesperson, right? But here you're taking
every row is a
every
sales.
row represent a salesperson.
Yes.
Correct. And both of them p-value is below 0.0 points. That's why you accepted both hypotheses. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Absolutely. I accepted both hypotheses
Right.
because in both cases, in the first one, P was 0.015, and in the other one was.
And the one is very 0.00 something, which is, so that's why you accept. So which means that you can conclude that one employee engagement impact on employee loyalty, right? And loyalty as well.
Customer loyalty.
On customer loyalty, and customer loyalty has a direct impact on to reinvest again.
Yes, absolutely.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Absolutely.
Right.
So that's the link that was
Is
established.
there any other, like, because here you're taking about the sales people. What about if you want to talk about, here you're taking one case, which is sales and employee engagement, right? And you're linking it with customer. Is there any other like best practices to measure employee engagement in different way? Because here you're linking it with the.
You mean different ways of linking it to another performance areas?
Yes. Yes, without considering the sales and the customers.
Yeah, for sure. You can, for example, check if engagement is impacting performance itself. Like if you're measuring the performance by the end of the year in terms of percentage, of targets achieved, then you can take in one, like the independent variable to be employee engagement, and the second one will be the score out of 100 of the performance appraisal, and then you can run another linear regression, or you can do it in other types of variables. Maybe you can do binary variables, engaged or not engaged versus top performer or low performer. That's another way of doing it. You can also measure the impact of employee engagement on their willingness to stay in the organization, which is also a very important area of organizational performance. Now that's some examples that I can get top of the mind.
Thank you. Interesting.
Sure.
Thank you, Rabia.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, further questions? I'm ready. All right. Otherwise, allow me to thank you again for taking the time to attend this webinar despite your busy schedule. And I'd also like to wish you a very lovely afternoon. Have a nice one, and hope to see you soon as well. Bye-bye.
Shukran, Rabia. Thank you.
Sure, most welcome. Thank you for joining, Maha.
Thank you.
Merck.com